Welcome to my channel. I'm 52 years old, and for most of my life I've been the kind of woman who played by the rules, married young, raised 2 daughters, stayed loyal to my husband. Throughout every up and down, I believed in routines and decency and quietly loving the life I built, even when it got smaller and less romantic with time. Love it on me was steady, not thrilling, not new, just familiar, but something happened not too long ago. Something I still can't fully explain. It wasn't planned, it wasn't supposed. Tell me in anything, and yet it left me questioning everything. I thought I knew about who I am and who I thought I'd always be. I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please don't make the same mistake I did. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of gray, forgettable day where time moves a little slower. My car had broken down again, third time this month, and Tom, my husband, was stuck in meetings all afternoon, so when his colleague Ethan offered to give me a ride home from the grocery store, I accepted without thinking twice. I knew Ethan from the few company functions I'd attended over the years. He was younger than Tom, maybe late 30s, with a calm, assured way of speaking. He always seemed polite, respectful, the kind of man who held the door open and looked you in the eye when he asked how you were. And while I never gave it much thought before, I always noticed how his attention lingered, not inappropriately, just longer than most. We made small talk in the parking lot. He offered to load my bags into the trunk of his silver sedan, which was cleaner than I expected for a bachelor. Are you sure this isn't out of your way? I asked, settling into the passenger seat. Not at all. He smiled. I live just 10 minutes past your place. Gives me a good excuse to get out of the office early. His voice had a certain softness to it, warm, unhurried. It made me feel oddly safe, which was not something I often felt in the presence of other men with. Tom, everything had become a transactional grocery list, bills, picking up the dry cleaning. I didn't resent him for it. That's just what marriage becomes after 30 years, doesn't it? As we pulled out of the lot, the sun broke through the clouds for a brief minute. It lit up the dashboard in a warm hue, and I saw Ethan glance sideways as his hand relaxed on the wheel. You seem quiet, he said. He shrugged. It's just been one of those days, you know how it is. He didn't press, just nodded, eyes back on the road, but something about his presence filled the car in a way that was hard to ignore in it romantic. Just present, listening way. Talked about the usual things, traffic, weather, a new bakery that had opened a donut. Found myself laughing more than I expected, especially when he told me Astery about Tom trying to fix the office coffee machine and flooding the break room. He didn't mention that part, I said, wiping tears of laughter from the corner off my eye. He probably left out the part where he blamed it on the intern. Ethan added, grinning. He laughed again, then let the moment quiet down. The city buzz faded as we drove into the slower suburban stretch of Maple Lane. The houses looked washed in golden afternoon light. Familiar, safe within, we came to a stoplight, idled in silence for a few moments, and nothing about that stillness felt different, like the moment had taken a breath of its own. Ethan turned to me. Not dramatically, not like in a movie, but just enough to meet my ice. May I ask you something, Sarah? I nodded, unsure why my pulse suddenly felt louder. Do you ever wonder if you're still seen? Question hit me in a place I hadn't visited in a long, long time. Seen? I repeated softly. I nodded again. I mean, as more than a man's wife, someone's mother. Just, you had looked away toward the window, toward the houses rolling, by trying to keep my voice steady all the time. I said. The light turned green, but we didn't move right away. He waited a beat, as if giving me space to say more. I couldn't, and then gently he pressed his foot to the gas, and the car rolled forward. Wouldn't speak for a few minutes. The air had changed, thicker, quieter, but my thoughts were racing. The ride continued in silence for a while, but it wasn't the kind of silence that begged to be filled. It felt more like something was unfolding between us, slowly, cautiously. I sat with my hands folded over my purse, staring out the window, pretending to admire the neat rows of houses in blooming lilacs and front yards. Viewed inside, I was somewhere else entirely. What Ethan had asked me if the stoplight lingered in my mind. Like a dropped stone still rippling across the surface, do you ever wonder if you're still seen? Hadn't meant it flirtatiously, or maybe he had. I wasn't even sure anymore. But either way, it was the first time in years that someone looked at me and didn't just see. Tom's wife, earthy woman who always brings potato salad to the cookoot, turned onto my street, and I glanced over at. Effin, his profile was calm facade air, was no smirk, no knowing look. He wasn't trying to push me anywhere. He had simply noticed me. Thanks for the ride, I said softly as he pulled into my driveway. He didn't put the car in park, just idled there. Sarah, he said, his voice quiet but certain. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, I hope. I didn't, you didn't, I replied quickly. It's just no one's asked much of anything like that in a long time. He looked over at me, then really looked, and he felt like I had to do something with me hands, with my eyes, anything to anchor myself. I've seen the way you carry yourself. Has said there's something in you. It's still very alive, but I get the sense you've been told to keep it tucked away. I felt heat rise tummy. Cheeks not embarrassment exactly, but a flush of awareness of being spoken toying a language I hadn't heard in years. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just reached for the door handle, but before I could open it, he said, if it's okay, could I walk? You to Thetbirch? I hesitated, the rational part off the one that managed Bill's baked birthday cakes, and reminded. Tom de Takei's blood pressure pills screamed no. But another part of me, quieter but more insistent, said yes. I nodded, sure. We walked up the short path to the front door. My porch light was flickering, and I made a mental note to have Tom fix it, knowing full well I'd probably just do it myselfy. Fished in my bag for the keys, the tension stretching like fabric between us, not tight, not uncomfortablest. Fragile, I'm sorry if I crossed the line back there, said, standing a step behind me even. I said again, turning to face him, it's just hard to know what to do with a moment like that. He nodded, hands in his pockets. I think sometimes moments happen just to remind us we're still human, still capable of feeling things there. It was again that calm honesty, feckin', that didn't demand a response. But made you want to give one anyway, thank you, I said, my voice catching a little. He looked at me a moment longer, then smiled gently. Have a good evening, Sarah. You too. Effin turned and walked back to his car, and I stood there for a moment with the key in my hand, the front door still locked behind me. My world quietly shifted when I stepped inside. The house was dim. Scent of lemon cleaner still hung in the air from the afternoon wipe. Down is it my purse on the counter, and just stood in the kitchen. Listening to Thestel Nesset wasn't a dramatic moment. Nothing had happened in the traditional sense. No lines crossed, no kisses stolen, and yet something had happened, something I felt in the tightness of my chest and the ache in my hands. Ethan had seen me, and now I couldn't unsee myself. The days that followed felt strange. Not in any obvious way, but in the quiet corners of me route in when I folded laundry, when I walked past. Mirror when I poured my morning coffee, I kept hearing his question echoing. My mind, do you ever wonder if you're still seen it, haunted me in the gentlest way. Tom didn't notice anything different. Hurley did anymore, had drifted into that stage off marriage, where silence wasn't awkward, it was just how we communicated. Ask if I'd pay the utility bill, ask if he remembered to take that trash out. We slept side by side, back to back, our conversations. Mostly about schedules, not feeling see, didn't resent him, I honestly didn't, but there was a growing sense inside me that I had started disappearing first slowly, then all at once. 2 days later, Ethan texted, Ethan, I hope this isn't crossing any lines, but I'm headed out for coffee in a bit if you'd like to join, no pressure. I stared at the message for a long time. I could have ignored it, should have maybe, but I didn't. We met at a small place on the corner of 5th and Lawson. It wasn't fancy, just Akazi coffee shop with ivy crawling up side and windows that always fogged in the morning. I got there early and chose a booth near the back, partly to feel safe, partly to stay unseen when He arrived. He looked surprised to see me already there, but then again, I was surprised at myself too. He slid into the seat across from me and gave a quiet smile. Thank you for coming. I almost didn't, I said, truthfully stirring my cafethal. I hadn't added anything to it. No, there was a silence, but again, no tongue comfortablest. Thoughtful, have been thinking about what you said. If and only admit about being seen, he leaned forward slightly, listening. I guess I didn't realize how much I missed it. No detention, but just someone noticing some of my own, seeing past the surface. Hannah Dad was spend so much time taking care of others that we forget to check in with ourselves. It's easy to get losty. Think I got lost a while ago, I say quite lengther. Ava said anything for a moment then, without changing his tone or posture. Effin said, I don't want to complicate your life. Sarah, that's not we. I reached out. I enjoy talking to you, that's all. And it was the sincerity in his voice that undid me, not flirtation, not suggestion. Just human kindness. It felt rare, sacred almost. Talked for nearly an hour about nothing important, and yet everythinger. Childhood's our favorite meals, the music we listened to when we couldn't sleep. I told him I used to dance alone in the kitchen when the kids were little, just to feel Olivia smiled like that was the most beautiful thing he'd heard all week when finally stood to leave. We hesitated to dag in, that now familiar pause that settled between us like a soft veil he opened the door for me, and as I stepped out into the light, he said, Sarah, if you ever need to talk or just breathe differently for a while, I'm here. I nodded, holding his gaze for a heartbeat longer than I should have. Thank you. We went our separate ways on that sidewalk. No touches, no promises, just an understanding that night as I lay in bed next to Tom. His back turned to me, breathing slowed. Even I felt something stir inside, meant guilt, not regret. Just awareness something had changed, and for the first time in years. I wasn't sure what came next. A week passed. I didn't see a fan, didn't hear from him. And I didn't reach out. I feared it because I didn't want to, but because I needed space to understand what was happening inside me. I walked through my days like a woman carrying an invisible question in her pocket. It wasn't about Ethan, not really. It was about Muho had. I become who was I still. Alouette Toby one evening after Tom had gone upstairs to watch the news. I stayed back in the kitchen, wiping the same clean counter over and over. My reflection in the window stared back at me, older, softer, but still here. Still somewhat a thought of the version of me from years ago, before the marriage settled into a habit, before the girls left for college, but the quiet became so loud. That woman danced barefoot on tile floors, made messes in the kitchen, read poetry late at night. That woman hadn't vanished yet. She was just waiting in. Somehow a single question from Amani, barely knew, had cracked the shell it built around her that night. I told Tom I needed to talk. We sat at the dining room table, just like we had when we were young and broke and dreaming. I looked at him, really looked, the man I'd built a life with, the father of my children, my partner. Even now I've been feeling invisible. I said, Hebling, surprise, what do you mean? I don't think you really see me anymore. I don't think you've let you. He sat back, folding his arms. Where is this coming from? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully from a place inside me that's been quiet for too long. I didn't tell him about Finn. Not because I was hiding something, but because this wasn't about Anathermanthus, was about the woman. I'd stopped buying the woman. I wanted to remember Tim, looked down, rubbed his jaw the way he always did when he didn't know what to say. I guess I just thought we were comfortable. Ara said, but I want more than comfortable. I want to feel alive again. For a long time, neither of us said anything, but for the first time in years, we were truly there together in a moment that wasn't about chores or schedules or bills eventually. He said, what do you need from me? I don't know yet, I whispered, but I need to start finding out. The next morning I went for a walk, no makeup, no destination, just air and sunlight and time, and halfway through my route, I passed by a little coffee shop on 5th and Lawson. Me feet stopped on their own. I stood there for a moment, watching people come and go. Then I walked inside. Ethan wasn't there, and strangely, I was okay with that. I ordered my coffee, and to the seat by the window, I pulled out a book I hadn't used in years. The pages were blank, but it felt like abigening out of something reckless or forbidden, but something necessary. Didn't need saving. I didn't need romance or rescue. I just needed to remember that I was still here, that I was still worth seeing. And as I sipped me coffee and put pen to paper, I realized something else. Too, I had already started seeing myself again, and that was